thing we would
Well,
have.
why don't I call it and then.
I can make my motion.
We could just talk about it and then they come when they come.
You'll second
So are
it.
we on?
Of course I will.
We're
That's why I wanted to sit right here.
Oh, thanks. I can
No.
still second it across the room.
Yeah, I
So
know.
I call them, the
Are we
finance.
live? Are we live?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Call the finance
Hello,
meeting to order. Today is, I don't even know what the date
It's
is.
the 16th, Wednesday the 16th of
16th
July.
of July, it's 5 o'clock. And in attendance right now is Peter Matusko, Paul Benjamin, and myself, Amy Fiden.
Hello, everybody.
Andy Kopacki will not be attending tonight, and Shardul Parmar will be just coming in a little late. So tonight's agenda is the budget and the override and what we're going to do. So this is just, we don't have any new numbers, so we could just talk about it.
Well, I mean, in theory, we need the numbers. I mean, because we're not sure if we're doing an override, what form it's going to take, and how much is going to be for different items that are on there. Essentially, we have general needs for the town itself, and then we have the fire department ambulance service, and then we have the idea that we would also create some specialized funding for capital for future and also for maintenance, which are two things sorely lacking in our budgets right now, is planning for those things. And it's especially exacerbated because for the last, well, it was happening before I got on this board, now I'm on my 4th year. The town has regularly used free cash, and in many cases stabilization money, to support specific items in an annual budget or to balance the budget. And in theory, those monies are, the free cash should be set aside and put into future expenses for capital, to build up a capital reserve and also to build up stabilization. And we've been eating that money up every year, and of course expenses have been growing, and so now we're at the end of that, we're at the thin end of the wedge of that type of financial management, and we need to correct it. And so the idea with an override would be to reorient how we're using our financial resources and tightening them up as best we can, but also to catch up with the inflationary pressure that the town's been under.
I think the taxpayers really want to know as to how much their taxes are going to be raised.
Yep.
I think
It
that's,
just comes down to,
Yep.
is my taxes going to be raised up 500, 600, 800 or more to having this override, which is going to be a lot for a lot of these people.
Mhm.
And we're
Sure.
talking seniors too.
Yep.
We're talking about those that are on those fixed incomes that I don't think a lot of us are taking into consideration, knowing that they have those fixed incomes, that we have to think about them. So I really think that we need to think about, yes, not taking out of stabilization, creating some sort of capital fund, but we need to cut down our spending. We can figure out whatever we can do. This just doesn't happen. It just seemed like it might have just snowballed, that we've just taken for granted of that free cash always being there in the stabilization fund. And now we're like, okay, maybe we shouldn't have done that in the first place. And we should have done this years ago, a few
Well,
years ago, 5 years ago.
Sure.
And now it's an emergency, and now we're into the point of now having an override, which I said it's not an override, it's a flat out tax increase.
so I think that another thing that they're going to be talking about is trying to figure out different ways to present it. And in my thinking is either just do it or don't. And I really don't necessarily know if a taxpayer is going to vote no because it's 600 rather than 500. If they're behind it, they're behind it. If they're not, they're not. So I don't necessarily know if that dollar amount plus then it's divided by 12, and a lot of it goes in people's escrow accounts because of the banks are paying for it, the mortgages, right? So yes, so I don't necessarily, I'm not crazy about the idea of splitting different things or trying to do some later or some of this. I definitely think we need to I'm not for moving anything out of stabilization because, and saying we're going to deal with it later. No, I think we need to deal with it right now. I don't think we should take out of stabilization. I don't think that's the wise thing to do at all. So I think we need to deal with the fire department budget right away and deal with this and put it all out on the table. And,
Well, I mean, you know, when you talk about the fire department, the issue is that if you're talking about spending, the biggest issue that we have for spending has been the fire department, the ambulance service, and now it's all combined. We're putting it all together now, but basically that department's been doubled. And prior to that, a few years ago, I mean, right now, we have enough people for a full-time fire department. But I don't know how many people know that 2 or 3 years ago, basically, if you had a fire after a certain hour, 7 o'clock.
I think it was 7.
7 o'clock at night, it was volunteers, and the chief would have to come from their home, and the assistant chief, and then we depended on local
Other towns.
Other towns, I mean, basically don't have a fire at those hours, because response time is, you know, gonna be affected by that.
Yeah.
In addition, the town voted to, you know, to add a second ambulance service into our town. And that has, originally it was believed that there would be a great deal of revenue to offset that new cost. But in fact, that revenue has not materialized hardly at all. It's been a very small percentage of what was originally anticipated. So,
Even if you realize the revenue,
Right.
it still wouldn't offset the increase.
correct.
So even if we went full,
Yep.
you know, primary
Yep.
ambulance,
We still wouldn't have it.
no, it's not, there wasn't the best business case that
Right.
we imagined.
Right, so we're looking at changing direction with the ambulance in terms of, in fact, the vote's already been taken by the select board to go to a second, only a second ambulance, but at the basic life support level. Because the ALS, advanced life support, adds a tremendous amount of additional cost to it. And that's one way of preserving, to some degree, some of the investment we made in both ambulances and personnel, and that those personnel will be fire department, fire people who will also run an ambulance when they're available for that. So if there's a fire, we may not have a second call ambulance, but we do have a first call ambulance, which Action's been doing, I believe, a good job, and it's affordable.
I think to Peter's point also that, you know, 5 years ago, we didn't have this building. We didn't also
Mhm.
have a library. We didn't have, and even though we did have a library and the operations were there, and the operational cost didn't go up that much. I don't think, or it's stable. I think it's been
Mhm.
pretty stable. We have added a lot of facilities
Mhm.
and added costs, operational costs, and staff
Mhm.
and everything. Because obviously, I don't think we really had a fully functioning senior center like this one
No, not at all.
before.
But this senior center is amazing. They've had, I think.
No, I'm not saying that it's not worth the cost. I think to Peter's point is that
Yeah.
we're starting to add all of this stuff up, and maybe some of it, there was a buffer because revenues and everything else kind of offset those increases. But we just want to, I think, whether or not we can claw back or roll back some of this stuff, I think we definitely do need to change a mindset going forward to go and say, we can't have this level of increase year after year because it's not sustainable with the revenues and the tax rate, our current tax rate, and with the extra 2.5 every year. It's just, something has to give.
Yeah. I mean, I do want to just put a plug in for this place because running it with one full-time employee and 2 part-time employees and then 100 volunteers.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah, but you have to
You have to
heat it,
You have to heat it
you have to
and
cool it.
the cost of the building
Right,
itself.
but
I'm just
these are-
saying the people
Right, but-
is
and-
amazing the way
And
they
the
run
debt
it.
service.
And the
Meaning
debt service.
and you have to pay for the debt service.
Right.
Of course, yeah.
But the town voted for that,
Yep.
okay? And the town voted for,
See that what I think what people don't realize is the town voted for the concept of, and which I think needs to change when we go forward. And to Peter's point,
Mhm.
is that when we go and move forward, we have to look at everything, not just like this building will cost X number of dollars and, you know, we'll have future revenues.
It's the future capital to run it.
And yeah, Yeah,
Oh, I-
what is,
Yeah,
what is
totally
it?
agree.
Why wasn't that
Yeah.
thought of before when these buildings were made? Why wasn't that thought of from the beginning?
And it should be. And
It should have been.
it should have been, and we could have, should have.
Right, but-
It's done. I think going forward, we do need to go,
Yeah.
Yeah.
we need to go, and we can't roll back this building, you know, we can't go.
Right, but it just seems like, oh, we did this, well, I'm sorry, but let's try to make not an excuse, but we did this wrong, let's do this to fix it. Instead of overseeing, really, is it the right people not thinking about what needs to be done for the future of the buildings that we have? Like you said, from the very beginning, this is gonna cost a lot, whatever millions of dollars. Hey, shouldn't we have some sort of capital for keeping this building as new as we possibly could?
And what are the operational costs?
The operational costs, all that. The
Right.
people that are here working
Sure.
for the time, working on it, whatever it takes to fixing things, how it was just overseen of saying, hey, we got a great building, here we go, it's gonna last great, but we're not gonna put any money invested into it.
So that's why I
That's-
think it's so important right now that we don't put it off, that we push through, they're doing the override, that we push this capital maintenance thing, because we have.
Don't delay it, right.
Don't delay it, we've exhausted every single bucket, we've gone into now stabilization. We need to build that fund, just like we built the CPA, we need to build that fund so that we can take care
I
of
agree.
our,
Yeah.
and start doing things differently.
Because it's just gonna compound,
Right.
Yeah.
right?
And
We know that.
And remember
We know-
something,
Yep.
if they had been more forward-thinking on this building, or say the library, or whatever the new buildings are, and they had said, okay, it's, let's just use the number, it's $10 million for this new structure, and the old way was, it's $10 million for the old structure. I mean, people approve it, and you go forward with it, and then suddenly you find it costs so much to run it, and you need a couple extra people. I don't think you'd have a different vote if you said, oh, 20% more is what it's gonna take on the override, besides the debt service, to an increase in operations. But I think that we would be paying more taxes previously to get to where we are now if we just done that. This building was gonna get built. This was something the town wanted. The library was gonna get built, it was something the town wanted.
But people could have adjusted their
Yes.
lifestyle, they could have adjusted their incomes, their investments,
I understand
whatever.
that.
And,
But we would have been paying more a few years ago to today,
Yeah.
and we'd have a pot of money to use for repairs.
without a doubt.
But
Okay.
has which I brought up in the last meeting, has every bucket been emptied? We know that, you know, solar was put onto this building. Where was the money that was set for this? I'm sorry, but if you're not setting the priorities for something of solar, but you've had money set aside for years for operational costs or capital for repairing things, I know you just giggled or smirked a little bit, but we had the money and we didn't use it properly.
Well, this was.
And everybody likes solar, but sorry, solar is not the way to go, where that's a want as to operational cost is more important than something that you want.
I think the reason why I giggled is the reason is that, you know, that was something, and I don't disagree with you. I think if we're in this financial situation, whether it's a good idea or a bad idea, we need to go and reevaluate it at the moment. And it wasn't done. And it was something that was put into place. However, it was one of those things that it wasn't identified, maybe at the right time, that we could roll this back. And we didn't have to move forward. I think a lot of this stuff, we're here, contracts were signed, everything was already in motion. But I don't disagree with what you're saying, that we should be evaluating any capital, future capital that we are looking to do, and whether or not it needs to be spent. Are there needs or are there wants? Right.
Right? And
Hey, do we-
if for 5 years, I mean, okay, you might create a little bit of interest of whatever it is, but I mean, everybody's willing to threaten the town of laying off all these things where we had money. But we're
Well,
gonna threaten,
yeah.
we had money, but we're willing to threaten
I
to part-time our fire department. We had money and it was just, I'm sorry, I mean, how can someone actually,
I don't think the cost of I don't think this perceived problem with spending the money that was allotted for the solar for this building,
Yeah.
when they did the financing for it, it was part of the build of the building. And the fact that they didn't finish it at the time, and I don't know what caused the delay, but they had the money there. So whether or not they spend it on solar or anything would have almost zero impact on the financial situation we're in now. We'd be talking about at best, I don't know what it costs to do the solar on this roof.
It's like $100,000.
$100,000.
So that's $20,000 a year, that's 5 years of maintenance being done and
Yeah, it would
and
help with
kept
the
up. So
maintenance.
you
Yeah,
can't
but-
say
but
that
the-
there's a
but the
difference that
override-
nothing would be done.
The needs of the override aren't a $20,000 problem, and it's not just maintenance. It's the inflationary costs that we've had from employee costs going up because of everything that's happened with the inflation in employees. We now have more unions than we had before.
I understand,
which-
I
all those
understand
things.
that.
So
But
I'm
it-
not
but if it's
arguing your
not brought-
point, but.
If it's not
but-
brought up to attention that we had money,
Yeah.
we spent it not wisely, and I know, okay, maybe that's 5 years of, 20 grand to operational cost of capital.
Right.
But, I still think it needs to be brought to attention. We had the money, we spent it on something that we shouldn't have spent it on. That's what gets me the most, that my taxpayer dollars are something for a want as to, okay, this building is covered for maintenance for the past 5 years, we got 100 grand. It shouldn't cost more than 20 grand for capital for doing maintenance, for painting, lights, mechanical, things like that. Now, that means that this money went under budget. So does that mean?
Well, this was
No.
also approved.
This
As
was
part-
approved.
This
This
was
was part-
approved
it's already
as
approved.
part of the first time.
Right.
Okay, so if something was approved, but then after, if we know, so what if it was approved? If those are emergency funds that we could have used for something else,
Well, it's one of those things where the funds were there, we could reallocate them.
That, and you'd have to go, again, all of that has to deal with going back into the voters and saying, okay, this was what was gonna be put here, we're gonna reallocate that money. They
okay,
have to vote on it.
but it was never done.
Right, that opportunity was never made.
That's what
Okay.
gets me the
But
most,
I
is that
understand
wasn't,
that.
I
that
don't
decision
disagree with
wasn't
that.
made.
Right.
So does there money allocated for the solar for the library? Did the fire department in North Hadley?
I think the library, the roof is gonna be the bigger
Well,
issue.
well, you're right,
Yeah.
it is, but then after, what about the
The
North Hadley Fire Department.
What are the other opportunities?
What other
there are?
opportunities are there? Then after, I guess my question is, we're trying to, whether or not if the select board, I know it's kind of, if they want to say this or not, a split tax rate between commercial and residential. And then after, I know we have, how much of our taxes go to CPA money? 3% of that
3%.
money?
Maybe
3%.
Yep.
They got $2 million. What budget or projects do they have? To getting this out of trouble,
You can't use that money.
you can't use that money.
Nope, can't use that money.
And that money, the reason why we keep doing it is it's been doing very, very well, and
The state
the state
contributes.
contributes quite a bit to it.
Okay, I didn't know, like I said,
Yeah,
we're
the
just
state
trying to figure out.
contributes to it.
I even asked the question about that,
You know,
whether
what
we could,
is
in this
there-
urgency, is there anywhere? There aren't a lot of buckets here that we can go to right now.
Now, here's the thing, what Peter just said, and he talked about this in the perception of us getting solar, but we're in trouble. Well, I had a conversation today, and that person says, well, what do you mean? We just put all this rubber at the elementary school for the playground. What do you mean they're in trouble? We
That was
have all this
CPA money, though.
Exactly, but that's not what people understand.
Right.
I had to go and explain, we
Right.
can't use CPA money, it's a different bucket.
Okay,
But the average tax person says, what do you mean? I'd rather have paid firefighters than had, even though I like the rubber on there, I would have gone without if I could pay the firefighter. They don't realize it's different buckets, and I think that is a lot of confusion in it. Yeah, so I mean, you were talking about different buckets, and that's happened today,
Yeah,
matter of fact.
You have to understand, I've run a business for probably since you were born, okay? And the way you
Yeah.
run an individual business, no, but the way you run an individual business, the way you run yours, you do look at everything there. So if you're thinking of replacing a truck and you have another need that's more important, and the truck you got, you could live with a little longer, or maybe you'll go for a different model, you can make those decisions. It's very different here because of the restrictions in municipality of where you can steal the money. Not steal, but where you can reallocate from.
Mhm.
There
I
are a lot
understand
of
that.
restrictions, okay? And that's just what it comes to. It's just, it's why you have two buildings here instead of one building. With a library on one floor and a senior center on another.
But in
Can't do it.
these,
Not allowed.
in these buckets, when we're doing on the general fund, one of the things we've been doing a lot of is borrowing. And and when I looked at some other, compare other towns, we have quite a bit of borrowing per capita. So we are one of the higher
We spend
areas. We have a
10%
lot.
of our budget is borrowing, I believe. It's
Yeah.
$2.5–3 million a year. That's our borrowing cost.
So we need to, I mean, and maybe at one point,
I think that's what it is now, right?
I think it's very, very high.
Yeah.
Right, but
But
they,
at one point, it was okay because we were getting, I mean, one of our loans was under 1%. So, I mean, we were doing amazing because times were low.
Right.
But now, and we started doing this as a plan for our capital because when we started doing the debt exclusions, the town turned around and said no, and they said no to all of them. So we said, okay, we have to figure out other ways to pay for capital. So they started borrowing all this. Well, now that they're borrowing all this, that line item for, debt and interest is huge.
Well, you have, between these two buildings, what do you have? You have, what, $20 million or something like that? You're paying principal and interest on that bond for next 20 years, so.
And so now they're going, and now
15 years or
we're
whatever
just
it's like.
looking to do it again, if we want to, and one of the things that I just found out is they're gonna look to see and get reevaluated again, and I don't know where our debt rating, or if it'll still be a AAA,
yeah,
As long as our stabilization
and they're
stays
gonna
up
look
there,
at doing that
at least
again
that's,
soon.
right.
that
Right.
helps.
Well, and that's why this override is even more important, because that's gonna factor in,
Yeah.
because when the credit agencies look at, okay, how our ability to raise taxes and the willingness to raise taxes, because if they feel that we're
That
fiscally
is true.
responsible, that, okay, when the tough times comes, they're willing to make the tough decisions to either to go and raise revenues in one way or another, it factors into our future borrowing costs. And the fact that the flip side to that is when you start raising taxes, there also comes a point where they're going to look at the values and look at the taxes and say, okay, they're getting to that limit of what they can actually raise, because you can only raise your taxes so much before the people are going to start to not be able to afford it.
Right. But it is nice when you compare us to some of the other towns. I mean, you go just across the line and you'll see what we get for our money. Our town looks great.
But what we're doing, I mean, we're now gonna be potentially, because we were talking about it last time, of what our numbers would be percentage-wise. I know Northampton is 4 times bigger than us, and their tax rate is 13.7, 13.8, and we're at 11.6. I mean, that could potentially put us equal as, same as Northampton. So that.
But their valuations
Their
are higher.
valuations are higher.
Their valuations
Much
are
higher.
higher, yeah,
Much higher.
than our valuations. It's a different, and it's also a very different, Hadley's Hadley. You can't really compare us to Northampton or Amherst or any really other municipality.
But people look, first thing they do is, they say, okay, the taxes and then the schools. That's the first, yeah, like you said, Hadley's Hadley, they like the farmland, all that we have in CPA. First thing they do is, they're from wherever they're from, where can we go about and buy a house, a decent expensive house with lower taxes? That's the first thing that they do. Second is gonna be, how's their school system? So now, you're evening it out to being, okay, Hadley's great, but we're the same taxes, but I'd like to be able to walk to places like Northampton instead of having to drive, like in Hadley. So, I mean, there's,
I'm
you know,
not sure if
Yeah.
we're apples to apples in those regards. I think that we do this override. It's a temporary bump, and we're hoping that as time goes on, revenues, everything else kind of stabilizes. This is just as
what do you mean it's a
hopefully.
temporary? This is a fix. This isn't gonna be a part-time override. This is a tax
It's a
increase.
permanent.
This is a permanent increase.
But isn't it over a certain? I believe it's.
No, it goes on forever, that
This is it.
whatever we raise.
So,
So if we raise taxes $1 million across the whole
What I'm
board,
saying is
yeah.
we can also
we
bring
think-
it back.
You can
Yeah,
reduce
you
it
can
just
reduce it at a
like,
later date if our finances change.
That's what
and
I
if-
mean.
And if inflation and everything else turns around, or if we get a huge growth in
Tax base.
tax base by new developments and things like that. Right now, we don't see a lot of that happening in the real short term. not
That's
even
what I
too
mean.
short.
In the
Right.
future, has there ever
Right.
been a
Yeah.
tax decrease?
Yeah.
Have we seen them?
I don't necessarily know a tax decrease, no. And we never did an override, so we
Yeah.
wouldn't have been a decrease because we never did an override. Now we have done where we haven't increased the 2.5. Now this is going to be, we're still gonna get the standard 2.5 increase.
Right.
On top of the 2.5 increase is the override.
Right.
So, yeah.
So you're talking about, okay, in the future, okay, the taxes could get lowered, but in the past, have they ever been lowered? Probably not. Taxes usually don't go down, they either
But
stay the same or they go up.
No, but I think also if you look at the recent history, we're talking about a tremendous amount of development that the town has undertaken in terms of buildings and, you know, we built 3 new buildings.
I
We
understand.
also doubled our fire department
Mhm.
and so you're talking about, you know, probably $2-3 million per year of increases
Mhm.
that we just
Right.
that do we see ourselves doing, I guess,
Well, how about-
continuing that
Right.
type of development
Right.
going
I
forward?
mean, the only other thing that's on the future agenda would be the
DPW.
DPW in the short term. And down the road, we may have to address the schools. Okay? We're doing repair work there, and it's very expensive. When we do repair, whatever it is, it's all very expensive. But when you look at what some of the towns around here have paid for, you know, new high schools and elementary schools recently,
100 million.
100 million. You know, at the same time, we built a library for, what did we pay, 10, something like that?
9.
9.
I thought
And-
9.
And Amherst is in the midst of a
Nine.
renovation expansion of one library that's
60
twice
million?
up. Yeah, it's 2.5, maybe.
60?
Forbes, yeah.
That's going for 60?
60 or 70 mil.
I thought it was 46 or something. 30.
Forbes?
Sounds like it down.
Not Forbes, Forbes is George.
No, not Forbes, but Jones?
Jones, yeah.
Yeah, Jones was like 50-60 million.
Yeah,
I
okay.
think the quote that they got was lower than what they've allocated.
Okay.
I mean, more than what
But
they've
nevertheless,
allocated.
it's twice our annual budget here for the whole town. Yeah.
I mean, again, we
Yeah,
can't compare.
Again, you
our-
can't compare those things.
I-
But,
yeah.
but what you can look at is that the town has done a very good job despite, there are things that everybody can point to and say, oh, I didn't like this, I didn't like that. I know you have your list.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? But the bottom line is regardless, that the tax rate has always been lower than all the surrounding towns. And even after an override, we are still going to be lower than all the surrounding towns because they are all under the same pressure we are. You know, regardless of the buildings, regardless of, the only thing that we've really done that has really cost us a lot is coming up with a full-time fire department and second run ambulance, second call ambulance. And that has tipped the balance here. But either way, when I first came on this board, before that stuff happened, every year you were looking at a $400,000 to $500,000, $600,000 gap that we were stealing money from free cash to balance the budget. Okay, so the expenses of the town, regardless of the buildings, regardless of all those things, still was out of kilter because they were trying not to raise taxes. Because there was just, let's not raise taxes. We have the same problem where we have a sewer enterprise fund that has zero money in reserve right now. I think it's in negative possibly. Zero.
I think it's the water, not the.
No, water has money.
Water has.
Water has the money. That's because there's more people. Everybody's paying on that.
Because they're gonna raise the water rates, not the sewer rates.
They're raising the sewer rates too.
Okay.
Both.
Both, because what you do is when you raise the water rates, the sewer rates are just, they take whatever your usage on water is and double it, and that's your sewer rate, basically. But they need to adjust it because there's no reserves. They've been eaten up.
And there's more things. We know that the water tanks need to be replaced.
Well, and
That's
that's
a $9
another,
million
that's a
project.
$9 million. $9 million because our grant got turned down because they said our taxes were too low and we didn't borrow, we weren't in debt enough.
But we only
Wow.
allocated 6.
Because we thought we were gonna get
I
3
thought,
million.
no, I thought we had to allocate, we voted, you had to vote for the whole 9 because they wouldn't even entertain we voted 9 million. You had to, and then if to get the grant, you had to vote the whole amount in to even apply for the grant. And then if they give you the grant, then you wouldn't use some of your own money.
I think
So-
maybe in the numbers I was looking at, we kept using 6 because we were hoping on the 3.
Right,
Maybe that
but
was.
we're not, that's not happening.
And the reason they gave is because our taxes are too low and
We're a wealthy community.
we're a
in their
wealthy
eyes.
community, yeah.
Compared to what, there are towns in this state that are in, dire straits and, financially, so.
Yeah, it's all relative.
It's all relative, okay?
Now, has there been any numbers to say that if there was gonna be an override, wherever it might be, that what the revenues would be for this override? It's like, if we know what our taxes are now, there's the override. Is that gonna be enough to pay for the maintenance of these buildings? Is it gonna be enough to pay for all of these departments and the fire department? Or are we gonna be in so much trouble that we're gonna pick a number, say, okay, we're gonna try to do the best we can? Have there been numbers saying, if our tax base is at 11.6 and if it goes up to 14, what's the generated number of
2 million.
revenues we're gonna be getting on taxes
2
to
million,
help
right?
pay
Yeah.
for that?
Yeah, that's 2
Well,
million.
2 million was the number that was used, they think they can trim that back a little because.
Or
the
1.9, something like that.
1.9, but they believe that they can pull that back a little bit because that still included going to ALS, I believe, with the ambulance service. So now that has been officially voted to be shut down, then the question is how much of what we're spending right now in that department is actually being used to get us to ALS, whether it's training or, other things. So if you don't have that, will we save, will they be able to cut some of that part down to get the number a little smaller? Yes, the whole point is that number, though, nevertheless, the 1.9 did not include anything for a capital fund or for maintenance fund.
That's a separate.
Right,
That-
that's
that would
separate
be
to
separate.
say
That would be separate.
1.9 plus
So-
10% to
Right,
put
right.
it into
So-
these
Right, so,
money spent for
Right.
capital,
right, but you have to
Or-
also, yes,
some sort of number.
I think the goal is to get the total, including, because they were doing about 300,000
yeah,
a year
yeah.
for the capitalization,
Right.
capital. I think the total combined between all of the increases it's probably going to end up being around 2 million.
2 million.
Now, the other thing is, what do you all think about the, if you're bringing it to the ballot, keeping the fire and the general together versus separate in the ballot?
I would
I think
keep it together.
Keep it together.
I think there's a very strong case for what we need to do at this point, and I think that separating it's going to give an opportunity to just kind of pick and choose, and we're going to end up with, if one side gets approved and the other, then we're still stuck with a budget that's not complete.
We got to lay down all our cards.
Yeah, we really do. I think we have to be transparent with people what the needs are. And we will still have low taxes compared to everywhere else in this area. And yes, there are things that we are going to do in the future to tighten things up, and we're going to
Says
talk
who?
about.
And who's gonna
Well, our
control,
committee.
who's gonna control
Our
that?
committee, well, wait a minute,
Well, I think, Peter, I think what your points, what we do as the finance committee, and I think our involvement in our discussions and what, again, you bring up excellent points. I don't
There's
think
money
anybody-
being spent that we don't even know that's being spent.
I think what, to that point, we need to ask. I think these are the questions that, and you're, I know.
But what do we know if we don't know what questions to ask? Well,
Okay.
if you don't ask the question, I don't need to tell you.
Well, we need to go and
Oh,
ask.
okay.
I think we need definitely.
Right?
I don't disagree with you. I'm saying we need to go at least make sure that our finance committee
Is informed.
is informed, and that when it's not informed, and if there is activities that we are not knowledgeable about,
That we should have been.
then we need to go.
And then what happens if there is something that we find out that money was spent
Yeah.
or if money was spent, what are the repercussions? That's the thing, there are none.
You're right.
There are none.
I don't, I don't.
You know, it's
I don't
easy-
disagree with
it's- You know, it's either to ask for forgiveness than it is for permission.
Well, I think going forward, then when we go and look at their annual budgets, we can go and say, well, you know, this was not, this wasn't the best use of the funds, in our opinion, and that this budget needs to represent a reduction of those expenses.
Oh, but then we gotta lay off our employees because this is the money that we
Well,
need. Those are the things you're gonna be getting. There's no,
I do think we could do things a little bit
you
better.
know what I mean? There's,
In some cases, like, I really would like to see us do really only the increases unless it's a huge emergency at budget season. So instead of midway through the year, so that we actually have a grasp on what everything is. Because that's what we were doing for a while, is things were happening throughout the year with the select board, and then by the time we would look at it, we were just trying to pull the pieces together.
And Peter, some of those things are capital. Those
Yeah.
aren't, those aren't,
Right.
those
No.
aren't, those aren't 100% our purview. And that needs to be, again, you know, we have a person who's on the capital committee. It's that level of those questions and that resolve and that discipline that we need to go, moving forward, provide.
if there was something that needed to be purchased or repaired, that we set a number and say, anything after this, it needs to be introduced to the finance committee saying, okay, $100,000 or something, setting a number, because if you don't ask the questions, well, you didn't tell us, and something was spent without us knowing, that's just now we're going back to the way things were.
Well, we
of
want to
just
do
spending
things a
money.
little
You know,
differently.
do we say a cutoff after $100,000? Finance committee needs to know what's going on in the money being spent, whether it feels for capital or, but setting a number to at least notifying us, because if we don't ask and they don't tell us, money's just more being spent.
Well,
Setting a number, we need to know this, and then that is gonna be the assisting with the discipline of the money being spent.
Well, the budget.
Or an idea.
Well, we control that. When we approve the budgets, we have their final line item every year. So those monies, we're already in control over. Like here, like the solar, that was capital. That was something that was done prior to your and my involvement at least.
Right.
And so that was something that was.
And that didn't go through capital, that went through the building. This was part
Yeah, it was
of,
part of the override.
no,
But,
it was
Part
part
of the override.
of the override for this
Excluding
building.
money for solar.
Yeah.
but when it comes to, like you're saying, when all the committees come to us, the town is already in debt, it was more of a reactionary instead of being proactive as to the money being spent. Right? It's like, okay, we're in debt, but this is what we need, but
I think.
yeah, things are tight, and then after, those have to work as hard as they do to try and find things to cutting it back.
Well,
It's reactionary.
Well, the biggest issue is that if we didn't have, you know, the real single, the single, you know, the two or three single line items, one being the fire department being doubled, that line item is tremendous. Meaning if we didn't have to absorb that this year, I'm pretty sure and the second was the insurance,
Right.
those two things.
Mhm.
And the third thing is really the union contracts. And those three things are really what's driving this.
Cost them.
Yeah, this cost
Mhm.
overrun. Yeah, those are the three things. It's nothing operationally. If those three things didn't happen, we would be operating.
Status quo, everything's going as it is, it's just all the expended
Yeah.
expenses, added expenses, yeah.
And to your point, that when we had set out to do the ambulance, there was an expectation of revenues offsetting those cost
Mhm.
increases. Now that we know more about it, we know that that's never going to really happen.
Right.
And then the insurance, I don't think anybody could have foreseen that. You know, that's just a nature of the business of getting insurance these days.
Right.
And then the
That's a
third-
high percentage too, though. What was it, 18%? That's
And-
You know,
the third thing-
I've had 18% increases over years in private insurance for, I've seen it.
Hey, my-
15. It's never, I don't think it's been below 10.
One of our
For years.
hotels, our building insurance doubled this
Right.
year,
Yeah, he told me that.
more than doubled. It was, and it's crazy.
Mm.
And then the third thing with the union, the contracts and getting everybody's wages on par with what the market really should be, that's really something that.
It's fair.
It's fair.
We have to
You know,
do it.
it's fair, it's something that there's a lot of people in the years past, you know, it's been pointed out many times that there's things that the employees of this town do that probably are not being done at many towns over, just because they're going above and beyond, working weekends, doing things that's not on normal time, that we weren't paying for when we go and really look at the true,
Going the
so
extra
their
mile.
true output that they were providing was significantly more than their compensation.
Actually, a while back, there was a presentation, I think, from the police department on how many hours our guys work and our people, not guys, sorry, our people work, and the number of, the different types of duties and things that we're doing compared to all the other communities around us, to show how hard we were working. And my reaction was, wow, if I was paying taxes in those other towns, I'd be pretty upset that their towns aren't as efficient as ours with the size of the department we have. To me, that was, we are getting, we're getting a lot of effort out of our people in the department. They're working a lot of hours, they're out doing stuff that they're supposed to be doing, and it's not a lot of administration.
Just what Linda does, that book that
Yeah.
does every year, that, you would have to pay an accounting firm, probably.
Don't tell her, don't say that in front of
A
her.
lot- Yeah, don't tell her.
Yeah,
No, a real accounting firm would be charging us,
Right.
from what I've seen, that level of detail, that level of work, if that's provided in there, just that would probably be more than her salary.
I'm thinking, outside the box. I know we have the Actionair as our primary, and we have our BOS. Has it been presented or thought of, it might be just saying, no, it doesn't even happen, that to getting action and 1099ing our ambulance paramedics, working for them and having a second bus?
Well, but our people are, okay.
I'm just trying to
I
think, if
understand.
there
Okay,
was a
but-
second action,
Okay.
and Action hires our paramedics, they're employed, and,
Yeah, but you're forgetting the fact that our paramedics and, not just the EMTs, our ambulance service are first and foremost, they're our fire people.
I understand
So
that.
what we have, if we fund this, the way we want to go forward with this, is we are going to have a full-time fire department, okay? And during the hours when they're not on call for
I understand-
fire,
I understand all
they're
that,
working
Paul. I
as an
understand
ambulance
all that.
service.
I
If you
understand all
separate
that.
those people out, we will not have a full-time fire department.
So you're saying cut out all the ambulance then? So it's one or the other. Either we have the ambulance or we have the fire department.
No.
You're right. 'Cause the way it works is that if there's a fire call.
Right.
Right.
We don't have a second ambulance.
Right.
That's all.
Yeah.
And that's true. That's 100%.
And that's
It's not, you can't have both
Right.
At the same time.
at the same time.
But there's an awful lot of time when we're able to have an ambulance where the fire department doesn't have any fire call duties. And so those personnel are available for a second call ambulance when we have a second call.
But then we don't have a full fire truck.
I understand all
Right.
that.
Okay?
We might.
I understand all that, but I was
Okay,
thinking about
but-
the employees of having, I know it was presented to us 6 months ago, that we needed to have another 3 more
Yeah.
employees, that we didn't want them to lay them off, having a second action bus.
So the-
But
the
trying to
3
think of ways to keeping those people hired, but yet keeping, I
Other
wouldn't say
revenue
because,
sources?
the having the expense of our ambulance as to having a second action I'm just kind of thinking around, you know what I mean, the saying, the having them
I
working
think I
for
understand
them.
what you're saying.
You know, kind of like,
You're trying to think about like outside the box way of providing a second ambulance service to keep the staff, basically.
Correct,
1099
exactly.
them. I think the issue with that, Peter, is that in order for that to happen, we would have to renegotiate with Action for them to add the second ambulance. So regardless of how they pay them,
Right.
whether it be 1099 in cash.
right,
whatever
I'm
it
just
is.
trying to think of other ways of keeping them
Yeah.
without laying
But I
off
think
and
the
and
problem
making a
is
second
that-
bus with more revenue. Well,
So
they
the-
get the revenue.
Yeah, so the issue would be that when they renegotiate with us, the cost that we're paying for the single ambulance is $150 at this point. And they've expressed to us that because of our call volume,
Mhm.
because it's not like Holyoke or something like that.
Right.
That they would have to charge
little
so
bit more.
much more
Understand,
for that second ambulance.
but
So
it'd still
the
be
math-
less than
the math-
having another ambulance.
Well, yeah,
Not
it would give us a
necessarily.
second ambulance. The problem is that
The
it would
cost.
cost us
Right.
more, and we wouldn't hit that threshold to knock the price down to
Right.
make it worth our
Right.
while.
Right.
The benefit wouldn't,
Yeah.
it wouldn't offset.
I was just
Yeah,
throwing,
we
see,
we
I'm just
haven't-
saying if
we
mud stuck
haven't-
to the wall,
no, no,
just
we-
ideas,
but these
just
things-
something.
We've talked about a second ambulance with Action to the extent that we did talk about it. It's just so much money. It didn't make sense, or we'd be there.
So now Linda and Mike, Linda, do you have any new numbers for us?
We're gonna bring them in there. 15 minutes and we'll have them, they'll be on the screen. I just hit send before I came over so that Jennifer would have it and be able to share it for the meeting.
Can she make printouts for us? Is there time for her to give us, so we can look at them? Because
I'd be happy to send them.
if it's possible,
To you.
just because sometimes it's hard to read the screen.
Oh.
Let me see if I can, let me see if she's still in the office.
If
I'll
that
ask
would be
her to
possible.
Print them out.
I just wanted, with a few moments minutes we have left, just talk about this, the backup generator, or is that,
We
is that
should-
on,
no.
is that wasn't on our agenda?
No,
Okay, so we
no.
can't.
So, but it is on our iBoard agenda.
Yeah, photocopy machine.
So we can talk about it,
We'll talk
but
about
not
it.
here.
Not here,
Right.
okay.
She's not
So,
on the computer.
do we have anything else we want to talk about? Because I can make a motion to end this meeting so people can have a couple minutes break because we're going into another meeting. Does that make sense?
So we did add the generator part to the budget discussion, and
Yeah.
before Jennifer left, she's answering me now. She's in the driveway.
Pictures and,
Yeah, uploaded all that stuff, so all the
Good,
stuff
great.
you sent, it'll be on the screen.
great.
Okay, I'll make a
But I'll
motion.
remember that
Thank
for
you.
future, that will make
Yeah,
the
it's just-
copies a little,
yeah.
yeah.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the finance committee meeting.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.